Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another video. So to start with, it's a pat on the back for us over at the Weekly Insight and on my YouTube channel. We've been nailing these calls. I couldn't make it any more clear for you guys. This is a newsletter from yesterday. We did a little introduction. Then the next line is the target range for ETH is looking like 2,200 and the target range for XRP is 192. You're fucking welcome, basically. Now, that being said, it gets a little bit more tricky now, in my opinion. The things that I've discussed happened. I thought the US were going to join the war. I thought we were going to get a flush out into the liquidity areas. Both of those things happened. Yesterday, the US bombed Iran. Again, we're not here to be a geopolitical channel. I was just talking about potential narratives that could give us the move that we were looking for in terms of liquidity, grab, and technically. Now what we're looking at is potentially to see if Iran reacts, because I still don't think, and this is what I'm going to get in, today's going to be more of an open discussion as we're digesting what happened yesterday, both from the geopolitical stance and also from the technical stance. We're just going to try and have a look at what goes on next. Before we get too deep into it, I just want to highlight one section of the newsletter actually, which is this. Where's the section I wanted to highlight? This section here, I wrote about ENA specifically, but you can apply the same logic to any altcoin. So what I said is, to give you a perspective, so basically I said, personally this week, this is last week, I added to my ENA position, allocating around 30% of the capital I had, and I actually added more over the weekend. So it's more like 50 to 60% of the capital that I have had on the sidelines is now allocated into ENA, and also still have my bids in for XRP, which haven't yet been filled. I just said the reason for it is if we look at this chart, for example, for ENA, if we get a 4.236 extension, at the time it was at 28 cents. Now you're getting an even better price on it at 24.5 cents. It was a 19x to all-time highs, and even from like 20 cents, it was only like it's like a 25x to all-time highs. And yes, that's a 6x difference in your capital. But you also have to remember that if we come down, if we don't come down, you don't get the entry, you just don't get any return on your capital. So that's why you allocate when it's in these areas. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. It's like, yes, you'd be missing out on some of the upside by waiting for an ideal entry, but you're also gambling on the chance you might not get the entry. That's why I've chosen to allocate some this week. I could be wrong, of course. If I am wrong, I don't want to miss out on the 19% upside, because what I'm saying is I do think we come down, and there probably is the chance for the perfect entry, which is what we're close to now. Not quite there, but today is even better opportunity to allocate than it was at the time of writing this newsletter. So probably now you're gambling with, for example, if we just go to ENA quickly, and I'm using ENA as the example because it's one of the things I've been buying. It's not because it's by far my favorite alt or anything like that. But like right now, it's a 22.5% upside return from this level. I'd probably be allocating the majority of my cash here. I do think, though, that there is still the chance for a further flush down, and that's what I'm going to get into now. But just I wanted to make it clear, guys, you're at good buy levels. You're at good buying levels for ENA. For a CRV look, CRV was in this range that we looked at for ages. This is when I was like going to Thailand. We discussed this range for a long time. We struggled with it. We broke out. We've now back tested that range. It's probably going to, I would presume somewhere around it holds a support for CRV, and then we start to head back to the upside. They're the sort of things that I'm looking at. If you're allocating spot or adding to bags, it's definitely not an awful place to add. With that being said, let's get into what I think comes next in the markets. Now, as we discussed weeks ago over on the weekly newsletter, and I've discussed multiple times on this YouTube channel, I do think 97k is the most likely area for a bounce. It's where the fixed range volume comes in. And it just like for Bitcoin, for example, I'm going to show you the liquidity pools now. This is Bitcoin. It would mean we get a sweep of this liquidity at 100k. We do come down into this sort of area here. When you get the sweep, you do often wick a little bit lower. I think it'd fake everyone down, and everyone's looking for the liquidity at like between 92 and 95k, which I do think is possible. Don't let me count that out. Like this area, I also do think is possible, for sure. Like I would say that's like a 40% probability, and it's a 60% we get 97k ish. That's where I am, or less than that, because we don't obviously have to go down from here, but I just think it's likely based on a few things, and I have loads of thoughts in my head here, so I'm just trying to get everything out to you in one fell swoop. So we have the liquidity below us. We're that close to it, I presume we sweep it. And if we get the sweep, then it does normally overextend a little bit. And if we overextend a little bit, where's the most likely area of support? 97k. That's basically my thought with Bitcoin. So with that being said, when Bitcoin comes down, it often translates into a pullback in alts. Now we're getting to a bit of a more tricky scenario with altcoins specifically. And we'll look at Bitcoin dominance, and then we'll look at altcoins XRP and ETH, and a few others like Sol, and because there's a few things that I want to point out. So Bitcoin dominance, yesterday everything changed. Yesterday Bitcoin dominance, and today continuing, Bitcoin dominance had its all-time high close yesterday, or all-time high of this cycle. We're now in the range of the potential start of alt season, where this has started previously, where alt season has started previously. I discussed this box for a long time. We didn't quite get the close above there. We didn't quite get the touch. I said, is that enough? People like Raoul Powell said, the top's probably in for Bitcoin dominance. I said I wasn't sure because of this exact reason. So this is the area where alt season has started from historically. I used this area, I found this area from where we had capitulation back in 2017. We bounced, created a range, and then since then, every time we've seen an alt season, it has touched back into that box and fallen, and never broken to the upside of this box either. So that's the other thing to remember, is probably somewhere between 65 and 73% or 74% for Bitcoin dominance is where we see alt season. Could come anywhere within here. Just going to take my drawings off to have a look where we could get this start of alt season from. Realistically, could start from anywhere around here. We did have a pullback there. And yes, we did then go and take the highs again slightly, but then we had an aggressive pullback here. So what we could, and then again, I'm just going to get into the next part in a second, trying to keep my thoughts parallel for you guys. We then, in 2019, was with the bear market, Bitcoin obviously took dominance, started to fall a bit, rallied up. 2020, end of 2020 into 21, again, Bitcoin dominance took a big puke. So what does this mean? How does this translate to altcoins? Well, if we look at a cycle maybe a bit like this, 2017 cycle, if we had a bit of a structure like kind of like this, it's never going to be exactly the same structurally. But what we could see is Bitcoin dominance rallied like it is now, like has a little push up, and then Bitcoin dominance falls as alts push up. Is a possible scenario as alts have taken their liquidity and Bitcoin hasn't. So Bitcoin hasn't swept the lows, yet if we look at ETH, XRP, they've both swept the majority of their liquidity. Now, this isn't my base case, that we don't go a little bit lower for alts. I feel like we do, because this structure, this volume isn't strength yet, but bottoms are very difficult to call out at the exact time. You do need to see a bit of chopping, and the structures that we look for example, for ETH might be we climb up, we come down, we bottom, we set the lower low in price action, and as you guys know, what I like to see is we have the low in the RSI and the higher low, and then off we go, and then off we go from there. So that's the bottoming sort of structure that I'd look for most altcoins. That's what I look for any technical bottom. We're looking for bullish divergences where we get a higher low on the RSI and a lower low in price action, and we're going to get into that in a second. But I'm just making the argument that there could be on Bitcoin dominance, like Bitcoin dominance is indicating from here alt season could start. So there is a world where Bitcoin sweeps its lows, altcoins kind of gain a bit of Bitcoin strength, and then altcoins really rally as Bitcoin dominance starts to capitulate. Now, are we quite there? I don't know. This is where it gets extremely complicated. This is why I think allocating to altcoin spot at this point, not a bad idea. But if we're going to try and guess the absolute lows, which is what I'm going to try and do right now, then you can forget that scenario, but it is definitely a scenario I want to talk to you guys about, because the alts have swept their lows and Bitcoin hasn't yet. And we're this close to alt season. It's somewhere around here. It's the elusive goose that we can't catch, but when it comes very quick, and you just grab onto it and ride it, okay? That's what I think is coming. So now trying to guess the absolute lows, which is now more of a guess than anything, because I've got a few different things that conflict that I want to show you guys. So looking at Bitcoin, we've looked at Bitcoin's dominant, looked at Bitcoin dominance, we've looked at Bitcoin's price action, looking at Bitcoin's liquidity. We have the liquidity below us, yet there is also liquidity above. Cool. This is where I think we go in the long term. Just looking at Bitcoin in the daily, just to reaffirm my thought process and confirm to you guys, look at the liquidity above us in comparison to what's below us. There's nothing below us, significant above us. Significant. It's going up here. We're just working out this bottom of this range. And to be honest, this structure for Bitcoin, if we just take the drawings off for a second, look, it's a range from the lows at 100K and the highs at 110. Do we normally have a structure where we sweep the bottom of the range and then go? Yes, and that's exactly what we're going to look at now for ETH. ETH. On the 4 hourly or the weekly, let's just look at the weekly. I'll show you that the weekly's been tricking everybody for a while, not really making a decision one way or another. Could we continue this low for ETH at 221? Could we come down to 2,000? I have said in the newsletter this week, what I actually said was, as much as liquidity gives us a nice price area, what we normally see, if we see a flush into the range, traders are forced to close positions, sell their longs, creating a cascading effect. This can lead to an aggressive downside wick, such as an additional 10%-ish to the downside, possibly more, below the liquidity. And this will likely be absorbed quickly by long positions and limit orders, which should swiftly drive the price back up. So what we've seen so far isn't that, in my opinion. The reaction so far hasn't been aggressive back to the upside, and I'll give you an example on XRP where I was looking at an aggressive bottom coming in just quickly. This is pretty aggressive wick here. This shows the amount of demand there is below. This is an aggressive wick. This is an aggressive wick, and large volume on XRP at these times mark the bottom. Okay, we haven't seen that. This is Binance for XRP liquidity. We haven't seen that. But back to ETH. ETH is ranging similar to XRP, similar to Bitcoin, like I was just saying. We've swept the highs of the range. We're now sweeping the lows of the range. If we go to the 4-hour time frame for ETH, and I'm showing you ETH because it represents altcoins, we're in the oversold area on the RSI. We'll probably, I think, maybe we bounce, touch the bottom of the range again, continue a little bit lower in price, maybe have that real capitulation wick, something like this. It could come to here and then down to like these sorts of levels potentially. Could come slightly higher and then down, and then you see the RSI start to bounce, come down, set the higher low on the RSI, and off we go whilst price makes these lower lows. That's the sort of structure that would be perfect for a bottoming structure for Ethereum. Okay, and also that might be what comes next for Bitcoin, as I said, potentially being in this range. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. I hope this is making sense to you guys. I feel like my thoughts haven't formulated perfectly, but I hope you're kind of understanding what I'm talking about. You could say that's the top of the range, or you could use the discussion that we have swept the highs of the range here. This is the range, Bitcoin to then sweep the lows of the range into that area and do something like that. That's what I'd be looking for a perfect bottoming structure for Bitcoin. Now, looking at ETH liquidity, so we've just talked about ETH and Bitcoin here, and now we're just going to go to ETH liquidity to show you exactly what's going on. Excuse me. On the hourly, ETH has taken the majority of the liquidity on the hourly. You can see this very easily on many different platforms. You don't have to use Trading Different for this. Big flush down in liquidity here and open interest. Lovely to see. An indicator that we could be close to the bottom because a lot of these people are now pushed out of positions. Moving over to XRP. Similar story for XRP, guys. XRP has flushed the majority of the liquidity. However, we still have this sitting below us for XRP at about 194. I still think we have that capitulation bottom to come in that probably takes us into between probably like 185 and 192, maybe slightly lower. I don't know exactly where the bottom comes in, but again, structurally for XRP, it's easier to see on a different chart. So we'll just use one that I've not got many drawings on. yeah, we'll use this chart here. I'm just going to take us to the hourly. I'll show you exactly what I'm going to show you. We've got, again, kind of this like the bottoming sort of range coming in here. Well, we've used that as support, this 208 level before. We've lost the 208 level. We've come back up now and tested. It's all this area here. It's not just the 208. It's all all these wicks here. We've come back up and we've tested that now as resistance. We're struggling to get the strength to come through to break that resistance. Probably head a little bit deeper into this area here, this liquidity area, and that's when we see the reversal come. That's where you're going to see, hopefully, buyers step in, the close out of all these long positions as people start to capitulate on the narrative and they say, oh look, it's bear market territory, we're going to the lows, we're going to probably take 150 and we're going to continue to the downside. That's what I'd be looking to see. So I'm looking to see again a pullback in here, some sort of bottoming structure, whether that's again bullish divergences. The RSI hasn't even pulled that deep on the hourly, to be fair, for XRP, so we might still have 2 more waves down or just some choppy bottoming structure to come. Again, I can't prophesize that exactly for you guys. I wish I could. We'd be billionaires if I could tell you exactly where the bottom was going to come in, but I can't. I can only tell you what I see. So we could see something like this come into the lows. That would be a lower low there. Would be nice to then see a higher low on the RSI and then we head up from there. But we also could just come in here. We could just chop about and do something like that. That would be what I'm thinking here for XRP, and we'll keep you updated as we get more price action from Bitcoin and ETH and Bitcoin dominance. So they're important things to watch, okay? But this liquidity area here, great place to add, great place to put in longs. It's the highest risk reward place to put in longs. And until we start to climb up and take recent swing highs and key levels like reclaim the 208, for example, and then reclaim 218, but realistically get closes above this 235 level and this descending trend line, we are still looking for bottoms, and I'm looking at buying at those levels, okay? Finally, just looking at Velo. I've got Sol on here as an example because I was looking at Sol way back when, this is like 24, and I was showing that there was a spike in open interest, but now, for example, Sol's got the highest level of open interest that we've ever seen, and that recurs along a lot of different alts. So is there a flush of this, for example, for Sol that's going to come down and take it like us to 100, or are we even going to flush the lows for Sol 93k? I don't know because of how high this open interest is. Doesn't look the same for XRP in terms of the amount of open interest. We're nearly at the lows. XRP's held pretty well. Also, guys, I don't want to say that we won't definitely sweep the lows here. It could happen on an aggressive wick to the downside. My base case is that it does not, but it is possible to sweep the 160 lows. If we look at where, this is where I think we're going to come down to, pretty much. We've got a nice range forming. We've tapped it, we've tapped it, we've tapped it, we've held it. We maybe come down here, we maybe just wick below it, sweep all that liquidity there, and then bop back to the upside. That's my base case for XRP. Is possible we do get an overextension and people do capitulate a little bit because there is liquidity there on the daily time frame, or the 4 hourly, I think it is. I'll just show you the 4 hourly, for example, for XRP. We do have this deeper liquidity here still to come for XRP at 192. But if we do zoom out, there is still some liquidity here at 160. I don't know if it's going to show us. It might be more clear with the 3x on as well. Yeah, there is still some liquidity down here all the way to like 148. My base case is that we don't get that, but there is still a possibility, and that is on the table as a potential. So basically, I think it's a good place to bid spot. We are on the precipice of alt season, and I can't start to call that until we see some different dynamics happen in the market. If alts really start to catch a bid here, one other thing that I didn't mention is I do want to see more volume come in. This volume is really weak to say that we've had a capitulation bottom and we've taken all that liquidity. Look at the bottom in volume for XRP is crap. The bottom in volume for ETH it's average to poor. Like, it was better when we were in mid-range. It was better here. It was better. Look at the difference in volume when we had the lows come in for ETH. When we got that bullish divergence in for ETH as well. Look here, where we had the second lows come in, and then we continue out from here. And we had these bullish divergence structure as well, again, for Bitcoin here. Look at the volume here. We had the lows. We double tapped the lows. The RSI set a higher low, and then we continued higher. We haven't seen, even with this pullback, I know Bitcoin's not really a great example because it hasn't pulled back as much, but the volume's been nowhere near as much, which suggests to me people are still waiting on the sidelines with their trades open and or with their limits ready, and we haven't pushed into that area. The right shoulder of my inverse head and shoulders that we discussed a long while ago, let's just show you where, comes in at around 188. That's my sort of price target, that sort of region, 188 region. Let's see if we get it. Let's see if we get it. My bids haven't been filled. Volume's not in. There are a few things that are still question marks, but we have taken the majority of the liquidity. So that's why I think spot buying's decent in these areas. Just time to hold on. What the narrative might be, I don't know. Have Iran got a nuke? That might be the narrative that comes out, and they say they're going to throw it at someone, or China get involved, Russia get involved. All these things I don't want to happen. They're just like potential narratives for escalation. They bomb a US airbase, US bomb accidentally a facility, or Israel do, or Iran bomb the middle of Israel, or something like this. I don't know how else we're going to get this flush now. Something along those lines is what I expect to come. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button. We've nailed it so far. So if you've been watching and following along my calls, please do subscribe to my newsletter for free. Subscribe to this video, subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it with a friend. And if you want to trade leverage, I have links to WEX and MEXC in the description of this video. Peace up, A-Town down, as Crypto Insight UK would say.